Welcome to the RPG Goblin, where we bring on guests, break down games, and make it fun and easy for you to start learning TTRPGs without any of the hassle. Today we are going to be talking about Reborn in Power and the Arthadian Anthologies that surround it and bring the lore of this game to life. Reborn in Power is many things. It is a game where you can create any character you want. You can create any galaxy, solar system, planet, anything that you want in sci-fi fantasy. And you get to explore also what it means to have power and what power can do and whether it will corrupt you and the stories that follow that. Reborn in Power is still being worked on, but that doesn't mean that you can't check it out, as we have on the creator of Reborn in Power, Matt/Arthadian, to talk about Reborn in Power with me. He runs his own show, Arthadian Anthologies, where he does actual plays and also breaks down the lore of the game. And this was such a fun discussion, so I cannot wait for you to get into it and learn all about Reborn in Power. So, let's get into it. Hi, welcome everyone to the RPG Goblin. I am your host, Willow, and I'm sort of the resident goblin who asks all the questions and wants to know about all the games. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about an RPG called Reborn in Power. And I am super, super excited because we actually have the creator of Reborn in Power, as the guest for today's episode. Matthew, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me on, Willow, and I'm excited to be here. So I am Matthew. Matt MS Arthadian is what I go by on the socials. I am the creative director of a project, like a creative venture, I call it, Arthadian Anthologies. It is an anthological based tabletop RPG community, and it's all about this new expanding universe that I've been creating, and I want to share it with the world and have the world come into it to help me expand it even more. And Reborn in Power is kind of the catalyst of this whole enterprise that I'm building, this whole new expanding universe, and I'm excited to be able to dive into it with you today.
Yes. So I am super, super excited to hear about all the anthology. Let's get started at kind of the, start of it, which is Reborn in Power. Can you tell me what Reborn in Power is?
So Reborn in Power is a online tabletop RPG. It is made to be a customization engine, and it is also like the physics behind the new expanding universe, the core realms, as I call it. It takes in a lot of different types of system mechanics and kind of puts them all together in order to become a modular system where I call it the Lego version of tabletop RPGs, where you can create your own little tiny pieces of a character and then kind of put them all together. In essence, every character is kind of like a spellcaster in D&D.
Oh, that's
so
that's really fun. So I don't know if I saw this. I think I saw this for your game. Were you saying it was sort of like GURPS in the way of like the level of customization that you have?
I would say yes. I haven't gotten to really experience GURPS, and I actually am not super well versed in the like tabletop RPGs like completely. I've played a few, but those were only like one shots, and I haven't been able to actually get to play full on campaigns and be able to experience the full extent of each system that I would like to, because time is a pain. Scheduling with people is a pain. Finding people is a pain sometimes. So
it's such a struggle. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but I base my game, my system currently, I base it off of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and Force and Destiny, the Fantasy Flight games. So most people know it as Edge of the Empire, the Fantasy Flight games version of like the Star Wars tabletop RPG. When I first started playing tabletops, I didn't like 4th edition. That was the first one I played, and I didn't like it. But then my buddy ended up getting Force and Destiny, and we love Star Wars like so much. So then he started playing it with us, and we got super into it. And eventually, I realized, like, because I've been a writer like most of my life, I had my entire universe that I had written about, and I've been always wanting to be able to immerse people into my stories. And so my initial thought was, okay, maybe I can create my own little thing. And then that sent me down the road of tabletop RPG development for not 9 years.
That is fascinating, though. That is so cool. I mean, I think that's a lot of dreams of, developers. I feel is like, I have this idea, I have this world, and I want to take people into it. And tabletop RPGs seem to be a great way to do that for a lot of different things. So I am curious. So what you said that it is inspired by D&D 5th edition and some of the fantasy and flight games. So is it like a D20 system where you're adding modifiers, or is there a bit more to it than that?
So I wanted to make it to where it's kind of the same concept as D&D, where you have a D20 and you roll it and then you add modifiers. But I use a D12 because
Fun.
I love the D12, and you don't get to use it very very often. So I was like, why not just use it all the time?
Justice for D12. Justice for the D12. I'm actually I make dice as well, and it's like every time that I like make D12s and I have these really cool ones. It's like I know no one's gonna use them. Like especially if you play D&D, unless you're a barbarian with a great axe, you're not gonna use a D12, and it's heartbreaking.
It's I realize that. And also, what is another thing is that I use the number 12 very often inside my entire game and the mechanics behind it. The number 12 and 5, that's basically, I call it the 12-5 system. Like if I'm talking technical terms, inside the system, your attributes, your ability scores, they're kind of the same thing as in D&D, where you have, your strength, your dexterity, but inside my game is agility, and then your constitution is like fortitude inside my game. But you actually the max you could have is 12. Your max level.
Oh, I see. Fun.
Your max level is 12. You have the D12, which is what you roll, and then every single skill in the game, anything that says you have a rank in it. So if you're level, then it's 12. If it's a rank, then it's a max of 5. And so those are like the two main numbers. And as soon as you start to understand those two numbers, you start to kind of get every single system. And then once you understand that inside the game, then it's a lot easier and runs a lot smoother for you. And then you can customize it however you'd like.
That's really, really cool. And I am curious, is there a way for people to play Reborn in Power now? And if so, how?
So currently, how I do it is I actually run. I'm starting to run one shots inside my own Discord community. I also have a beginner module that I'm working on, and that is cool. Going to allow people to actually play through an actual story within the universe, as well as be able to learn the system and just how it runs. And that is what I have right now. I don't have enough people who are running the game, so there's not as much people, like there's not enough time to be able to run every single person who wants to come and play. But I hope to potentially like build that community out and start to actually have other people running the game, whether it be through their own module or even through like their own homebrew adventures. I've had another one of my friends actually run the game for me, and he did really well actually. And
that's so cool. Yeah,
it runs well. I think the thing about my system is that it is complex, so there are a lot of moving mechanics within it, and that all like interact with one another. So it's like you're running a spellcaster at every point, because you have so many things so many options, and it can be overwhelming. But I allow inside the system I've made it inside the system that so that you have a path if you choose a specific route that you want to take. Like if you want to focus solely, I'm going to be a fighter, but I want to be a fighter who can like craft his own gear and stuff. So then you can actually make that kind of character and focus solely on that, and then just I guess min maxing is very popular.
Making very specific builds, which is
Yes.
honestly really, really cool. I definitely have a love for rules light games, things that are a bit more simpler, but I think there is such a appeal to those more crunchy games that are like,
Hmm.
it does take a while to learn, and usually, such as Pathfinder more so, you can come to the game with an idea or even like look through the options itself and build such a specific character
Yeah.
and play a very specific way that I think is so fun that I mean you can get within some of these rules like games sometimes, but there are definitely people who just enjoy the rules and the crunch and all of that. So I think that's amazing. With how crunchy the game is, would you like to talk about some of the mechanics of it? Like are there classes? Are there like spells? Because you say that it
Yes.
is sort of inspired by D&D 5th edition. I'm
Okay, so it's not super. The reason why I say it I took from fifth edition. I tried to take the simplified aspects of fifth edition and incorporate it
mm,
into Reborn in Power. So like
I
for
see, gotcha.
instance, like when you're the GM and you want to come up with a difficulty like a difficulty for the check, you can just come up with it right there. I have multiple systems
Mhm.
of how you can determine a difficulty, but you can just come up with it on the spot. And there's a chart of saying like this is how difficult certain checks would be inside
Mhm.
of it. And the thing about Reborn in Power is that I wanted to make it so customizable and modular to where it you multi-classing is so easy inside the system. All you really need is a slot to be able to access a specific skill, feat, or ability that you get. And you need to be the correct level for it. And you just need to have the right amount of experience points or CP chosen points inside the game. So basically, if you like, let's say you're a level 5 character, you'd have like 6 slots that you can get different skills, feats, and abilities. Skills are like the physical type things that will use stamina. So you can have multiple attacks on your turn that will you can add an extra die to your attack and damage rolls based off of your skill, and then you spend stamina to use that. Feats are more passive in a way where they're still technically active, but
Mhm.
you get to add a bonus instead of an extra die to it, and you don't spend stamina or energy. You don't spend any like status scores that will deplete your reserves basically.
Yeah.
And then you have the abilities, which are like the spells, and those are the magic system is very it's a hard magic system. I have literally I've made it to where you can customize it in so many ways that it can get pretty complex, but also really fun to use. Like I have mages, I have kinetics, so you can like
Ooh.
use like different basically how kinetics works inside the universe is that kinetic energy is in essence an ability to manipulate molecular structures
Mhm.
on an atomic scale. So you can manipulate the atoms within a specific matter, and then you can cause like elemental changes in it, or even cause them to get what is known as the rushed effect, which then breaks them apart and causes them to get all spiraled around. Kinetics are really dangerous.
Yeah, that
It,
that sounds
it's
insane.
yeah, it's what's crazy about it is that when you're able to use kinetics and cause a kinetic rush, the rushed effect is it's a negative effect that happens to people, and if you get affected by it, your attributes will be cut in half permanently
Mm.
until you are able to be healed by another kinetic who can reverse it for
Oh,
you.
wow.
So there's the game. allows you to feel like you're breaking the game, but also will break the game towards you as well. So there's a balancing act to it, and you will feel like you're a god. But then
Yeah, that's
you,
what it
but
seems.
but then you
That's crazy.
realize that, but then you realize, oh crap, I am not there yet.
Because these can be used against me. This is
Yes, yeah,
dangerous.
yeah.
Actually, I mean that reminds me though, is like what sort of stories is Reborn in Power best at telling?
I would say so. I focus more so on science fantasy stories.
Hmm.
I love science fantasy. So the entire system that I've built is based around the core realms, and that the core realms is heavily science fantasy. More so, I would say science fiction, but like there's those
Hmm.
fantasy elements going through it. It's like gods and higher entities and magics and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
there is technology, there's space that you can explore, going to different worlds, seeing different aliens, encountering things that will bend your reality in multiple ways. And I try to incorporate my own personal knowledge of physics in certain ways. I'm not a physicist. I don't claim to be like a world renowned scientist of some kind, but I like to take in the aspects of our own universe and try to incorporate how would a fictional universe begin and be formed through actual physical laws,
Hmm.
and also
That's really cool.
utilizing actual mythology as well, incorporated
Hmm.
into that. And so the core realms is my baby. It has become like this huge universe that I've been telling stories in for a very long time, and it's hard to really truly dive into one aspect of it because there's so many aspects. Like if you think about the Forgotten Realms and D&D lore and how vast it is, it's like on that level, and it's also on like the
Hmm.
level of like Marvel and DC and all that stuff. So it'd be hard for me to actually pinpoint a good place to actually focus on, but I could dive into multiple different aspects of it as well.
Absolutely. I think that is amazing because I know there are people the when you start getting into the lore of, popular TTRPGs, or even if they're not super popular, but if you start getting into the lore of TTRPGs, I think it is so fascinating to be able to explore and play in these like in-depth worlds and stories that are already created. I think that is absolutely wonderful. I am curious with the approach that you want to take for Reborn in Power, is it something similar to how D&D has like campaign books where they will, create certain settings or books that are where you play through a story and a specific part of their universe?
It is kind of the same way what I've been doing so far, because I started my podcast in August of 2020, and
Mhm.
when I did that, I was actually finishing my first Reborn in Power campaign that wasn't recorded or anything like that.
Mhm.
And that was when I actually kind of finished up most of the actual system itself as well. And when I started my podcast, I was like, hey, I'm just going to start just explaining my universe, like whatever I need to do. And so,
Mhm.
like, if you go back and listen to like the first episode of my podcast, you get to hear kind of like my actual progression through it all,
Mhm.
and how I tell it through entries of like of lore and explaining it, and then as it gets further in to around like like the end of season 2 and beginning of season 3, I actually start to give more detailed stories inside
Mhm.
inside the universe of the core realms. And I want to actually create modules, but I also want it to be open enough to where other people can create their own stuff, because from what
Mhm.
I've experienced, and like this is also like a personal thing for me, it's hard for me to get into like modules, like settings and all that stuff, and like play through them, because it doesn't feel as connected to the person who's running it, because the person who's running it is just
Mhm.
reading through it and going through it. Like it's fun to hear these stories, but also sometimes it feels more real when it is a homebrewed adventure. So how I
Yeah.
made how I made Reborn in Power is so that it is, if you learn it, if you learn the system, you can actually homebrew it, homebrew really quickly, able to do like whatever you really want to do inside the system. You don't have you can reskin things very easily,
Mhm.
or you can actually like make your own stuff. Like for example, I if you ask me to make a new like a new like playable race inside Reborn in Power, I could probably make it within 5-10 minutes or so and be done with it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Or if you ask me to make like a new skill for you that you want to use, I could finish that in like 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Like you could make it really quickly. And then also what I want to do is I want to actually incentivize people to actually make that and be a part of the community. So I want to
Mhm.
pay people for that, for creating their own content and putting it up as like entries inside the actual community that I'm building. And I want it to become like a shared universe in a way
Yeah. That's really,
that
really
which you could
cool,
make a little
actually.
pocket of a of like a galaxy. You could have your own galaxy inside the core realms and be like, oh, I'm a galaxy from far away,
Mhm.
and and I have this energy called the Schwartz or something. I don't know.
Whatever they could come up with. I think that is so cool to integrate like the community into the actual, setting and lore of the game. That is really, really neat. I like that a lot. And how important is knowing the lore, and is the lore to playing the game? Like, do you need to know a good chunk of it to enjoy playing it, or can you kind of go from, I pick up this system, I'm going to just create my own world in it and be able to play it just fine?
So right now, knowing lore is I would say probably a big chunk of it,
Hmm.
because I've customized it to be like centered around my universe. But
Hmm.
if you learn it, if you learn it and then start making your own stuff through the system, then it becomes easier. But there's a lot of options. I actually just made like cat people inside of it. I made cat people. I made turtle people. Um, I also made a beast tamer species as well. And I'm trying to incorporate a lot of different aspects that people can start to explore different worlds. And it's pretty easy to just be like, okay, I'm gonna choose. So what you do is when you're making your character, you choose your race, your origin, and then your faction, and then your faction will give you your gear. Your origin will give you your vocation, which is kind of like your class, but it's not it's not a linear system, so it's a modular system. You choose your vocation, but your vocation gives you a benefit so that you can go down a certain path if you'd like. You
Hmm.
don't have to go down that path if you don't want to, but it's there to help you, to give you better chances at survival in the future based off of the path that you go down.
Hmm.
Play you could play political campaigns. Like there's a diplomat vocation inside of it. I haven't gotten to really dive deep into that because none of my players have got into have got like played a diplomat or like a senator inside the stuff, even though I love political intrigue.
Uh-huh.
But there's a bunch of different there's 12 vocations actually total, and I have tried to incorporate a bunch of different lore aspects. I've written I've actually been writing this module, well, this I would say it's an archive. It's like an archive of lore so that people can learn
Hmm.
about the different worlds that I have to offer, and how each society on the worlds works works in tangent with one another. And I try to
Hmm.
incorporate at least one conflicting society who's going to cause problems for people on that said world. And then the thing is I don't try to really add too much. like like the minor cities, like the little towns that you might visit on your travels or something like that, because eventually you might get like a pod that can fly from city, like capital city to capital city, and then off world. And then when you're playing space games, it's harder to, it's, you're not really exploring the worlds, you're exploring the universe at that point.
Yeah. And there's a lot there.
Yeah.
But that is so cool. I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade with how the lore is set up, and then even with the character creation with like kind of the different, factions in Vampire the Masquerade. It would be clans and stuff like that. And how it all sort of ties together. And that's a bit more, I mean, that's different kinds of stories and stuff it can tell. But it sort of reminds me of that because Vampire the Masquerade is super like entrenched in lore. There's just so much of it. So it reminds me a lot of that, but you could completely discard or use some of it and play your own homebrew games within that setting. So that it reminds me of that, which I find to be really, really cool because it gives the opportunity for both the people who love that structure and lore of the games, but also lets people who might want to, play their own homebrew worlds in it as well. So I like that a lot.
Also, what's really cool about Reborn in Power is because it is, so I wanted to give players all the choices. The actual characters are called chosen, and so there's like there's just choices in everything. I know it's sometimes overwhelming, but the thing is, I actually made it to where when you get you get CP after every session, and you can spend that CP on everything, including when you choose to level up. And so the players get to choose when they level up, and also because it's only 1 to 12 when you're going through, the campaigns are shorter than like an average D&D campaign. And so you can actually get if you wanted to end up world building like your own just one world. You bring your own homebrewed world into it. You check out the system. You come through and see like all the things that it has to offer, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to reskin these things to fit better with my setting, and then you literally can just go through it and stick with your world. And it would be it would probably be a shorter campaign, but you could focus on just giving your players like specific types of things. Sometimes you're limited to what the world has to offer you. So like in D&D, you have all the different species, right, that you could be. But like sometimes a DM will be like, oh, you can't play these ones because that doesn't exist on this world. And then so you could just like focus in on it. Sometimes making sure that players don't have as many choices is better, especially for new players, because new players it's overwhelming to be able to see like, oh, all these different choices. You're like, oh crap. Which is also why I'm working on actually making a bunch of pre-made characters that are like a different things, and all you have to really decide, okay, I want to play like a mage character. What kind of mage characters do I have? And here's the list of mage characters you can make, or you can play as.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, and basically, I want to make it as open as possible for anyone to come in and be a part of the community, but also I want to actually give people the opportunity to be a part of this thing that's being created and share in a collaborative storytelling experience, not just in their own games, but cross games. So if I have like I'm building this like podcast network, and like another person wants to be like, oh hey, I'm going to try to run Reborn in Power too. It's like, okay, maybe we could collaborate like together and see like what is happening on your world that is causing problems on my world, or something like that. Maybe there's a separate faction that has like a military armaments on, like there's like trade agreements going on, and the trade agreements aren't going well, and then so both of the player, like both of the like the squadrons inside each campaign, have to kind of like send messages across worlds to try to figure out how best to make sure that the conflict is like ceased. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things that could happen, and I want to try to do it all, honestly. And sometimes
Mhm.
that's too much.
That is so fair. It's so easy to go, big. Like I want it all, but I mean, I think you have a very solid like idea for the actual game itself. I think it's really really cool. Though I am curious. You mentioned the characters are called chosen. Why
Yes.
are they called chosen?
So inside Reborn in Power, I mean the Reborn in Power is a play on words because and
Yeah, I
and
noticed that
rest
when I
in
was doing my
rest
notes
in
for.
peace. So inside the core realms. It is a universe where life does not end at death. I say
Mhm.
that in every single one of my podcast episodes. And basically, chosen are these beings with more free will than those who are, the NPCs. And because of that, there are the higher entities, the beings that have power over like the different realms and all that stuff. They find these chosen, and if they're like a morally good higher entity, they're going to probably be trying to guide you down a more righteous path, a better path, or and then if they're not so good, they might manipulate you. You don't know you don't know what's going to happen other than the fact that these beings are coming to you in dreams and in visions. And sometimes this is spurred on by a traumatic event. It is
Mhm.
sometimes spurred on because your family lineage or something like that. However, you want to create your character, and also however the lore master chooses that something's going to come about inside your story, inside the story. And so
Mhm.
you how I do it is I usually base it off of how my players choose to make their characters.
Mhm.
And there's because there's 7 realms. Each realm has their own pantheon. So
Mhm.
based off of whichever race they choose that is from a specific realm, they are going to be more aligned towards a specific type of pantheon for these higher entities to start to either
Oh,
manipulate them or guide them in different
oh,
ways. And
yeah, that's
so
really neat.
when you die inside the game, there is an actual mechanic for you to become reborn in power. And
Mm.
these higher entities will give you a chance to become reborn in power. Or but like the thing is, it's like you don't know if these things are in your best interest. So
Mhm.
it's a difficult choice, and there are ways to come back. And if you come back, you there are some things that might cause problems. You might be going down a worse path than you were on before, or you might be going down a better path than you were before, and you will probably gain more power and experience based off
Yeah.
of that.
Interesting. So, like, what does happen if they do choose to be reborn in power?
So what happens is when they it truly depends on which entity is
Mhm.
like let's say you are a so inside one of the realms, the realms is called Evemore, and Evemore is this feminine figure who when you look upon her, she looks like the most beautiful being you've ever seen, and you are
Mhm.
just mesmerized by her. She has she is a dichotomy in herself. So there's the dusk and the dawn, and how I play with it is that Evemore is all about emotions and how you regulate your emotions. And so the
Mhm.
dawn is these positive emotions, and then the dusk are the negative emotions. And when you let's say you die as a being from Evemore,
Mhm.
and you died in a situation where you had suffered in some way, and in your suffering you had so much sorrow, and then a being from the like a higher entity from the dusk comes about, and they're the sorrowness of your soul, and they come to try to manipulate that sorrowness. And whether or not you have the ability to fight off that sorrowness, or you choose to accept it. Let's say you choose to accept it, and the sorrow like brings you back, but then you have to you struggle even more constantly throughout your life as you have been brought back to life, but now you're struggling because you have been brought back by the embodiment of your own sorrowness. And
Oh,
so
wow.
there's very metaphysical concepts that dive deep into it and into the
Mhm.
storytelling aspect of it. And but you could, because you got reborn through that sorrowness embodiment, this entity, the that actually might give you certain powers that you didn't have before. Like you can
Mhm.
actually cause people to go through the grieving process or something like that. Like on
Oh,
like you
wow.
can manipulate their grieving process for something, bring back memories that makes them lose their focus or something like that. And so
Oh, that's so sad.
it literally, you could come up with multiple different ideas, and that is just one entity within the realm of Evemore. And
Mhm.
and there's 7 different realms that I've created like different entities for
Mhm.
throughout.
Yeah, that is wild. I That is absolutely crazy. That is so cool, though. Like, and I'm curious for the powers. Is that something that is? It doesn't seem like it's something that you pick from a list of, anything. It
No,
feels like something you create, and it's like customized for whatever the situation was. And I find that really, really cool.
yeah, that is gonna be that is one of my daunting goals, is to try to make powers for each and every entity that I have, that
Hmm.
I've created. But the thing is because Reborn in Power is about like customization, if you have your own specific higher entity that you want to use inside your own world that you're playing with, then you can customize like what powers they might give to a champion of theirs.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of making a list of them, but I think the freedom of it being anything and also up to interpretation of the situation and the description of the GM of the game, I think that fits even more with kind of that customized feel and
Hmm.
also makes it unique every single time because maybe I don't know how likely the situation is, but maybe there's a situation where someone might be might be reborn by the same entity. You could even decide on different powers depending on the person just from how they died or
Hmm.
something like that that I find very, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also like what's really cool is you could actually, like, let's say someone did die, and like 2 players actually died with the same entity, bringing
Mhm.
them back, or are visiting them in certain ways and giving them powers, be up like that will make them more powerful, and maybe they're connected in some way because of that, and now they can actually collaborate with one another on a cosmic scale. And like this, like
Yeah.
there's so many ways that you could do some cool stories with it.
No, absolutely. That sounds really cool. And actually, I can't say a lot about it because I know that my brother who plays in this game listens to these episodes. But the the homebrew D&D campaign that I play kind of reminds me of Reborn in Power a little bit. Not exactly, but when you're talking about like the different entities in play and the guiding and the manipulation and all of that, that's a big like structure
Hmm.
in this game that I've been running. So I'm like finding it really fascinating to hear about, having those loose things with the power and hearing about like how it works because that's kind of giving me some ideas for my game.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also I find it really fascinating because that again is a similar idea to something that I've been running and this just sounds insanely cool.
Yeah, I love the metaphysical aspects of like your own soul and how that could be manipulated or set on a better path in certain
Mhm,
ways. And there are concepts inside my universe that I've sought to really explore, like the concept of power and how like the saying goes that power corrupts absolutely, and like the
mhm,
more power you have, the more you're susceptible to corruption. But
mhm,
what if there's a pure form of power to where you you're able to fight off that corruption that the power gives you, and
mhm,
you're able to really use it like the right way. And so I have entities that are aligned in that direction as well.
mhm.
And then I also have the entities who will consume you whole until you are no longer able to actually make your own decisions and you are part of a hive mind kind of thing. So
Yeah, no, that's crazy. No, that's so cool though. I mean, actually I'm curious. So with the game, how the characters are built, do you build in them dying already, or is that something that's more so to be explored through playing the game?
you it's more so through playing the game, I would say.
Mhm,
But I mean, you could obviously create a character that has already died, and then you basically say you could tell your lore master in this case is what I call the GMs and the DMs and all that stuff. But like a lore master, you could tell your lore master, hey, I want to be a character that has already died and has gone through the rebirth process. um,
mhm,
and what is a good way to get that situated, and then the lore master can go through the different entities that their character might or like have encountered, and then they could tie themselves to it so they could be like a holy voice, which is like my version of clerics, the vocation.
mhm.
So you could choose to be a holy voice, or you could choose to be like an assassin who ends up like literally doing this evil god's bidding because they brought you back to life so that you could do something for
Yeah, yeah, that's really neat.
so you can it's kind of like warlocks inside inside
Mhm,
D&D, because you as a warlock you have the patron, and that is like your patron, but you already start with that. But inside this game
mhm,
you could choose like everyone kind of at some point might start experiencing these things. If it's
mhm.
not an entity, it might be some kind of premonitions that of something that is tied their to their actual lifespan. So like
Mhm,
there's a quantum realm inside my universe, and the quantum realm focuses on like reality and how and the like subatomic nature of just all of physics and stuff. And so like you could actually say that maybe your character like is somewhat of a like clairvoyant, or has visions of the future, because he has some kind of when he died through going through this quantum anomaly that ended up bringing him back to life. And but it turned out that he was brought back to life because he got one of his other selves inside an alternate version of his reality got shunted into his reality, and his entire consciousness got shifted over. And so it was like
That
a
would be
huge,
wild. Oh
yeah,
my
so
gosh.
there's some deep things that you could do with it.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
You can see that I come up I have these like these ideas that just flow through my head, and I can't like I sometimes it's hard for me to get them out because I want to explore
Mhm.
them so much, and I can only explore so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is so freaking cool. I mean, now I'm curious because you've played your game. Has there been some really interesting characters that your players have come up with?
Oh we. Yes, very interesting characters. I I'm trying like the some of them are like the really deep ones that have been made. I'm trying not to spoil anything because they haven't like really
Mhm.
gotten to come out. But there's one of my my friend, my investor too. He's invested into the game a lot, and he created two characters that are actually from like the so one of the characters is an Archaean, which is from the Magenium realm, which is like my magic. Like there, it's the realm of elements. It's where the elemental domains are. It's also where
Mhm.
these gods like come about, divinity. It's like mages, all the magic stuff basically for inside my universe. He actually his character named William Soar, he actually had a situation where he was friends with a reticon, which are being like these large giant creatures from Moriot, which is a world inside Evemore, and
Mhm.
he ended up going to this world and taking a trial that these reticon go through, and uh, he ended up becoming Evemore's chosen, even though he was from Magenium, from Archaea, and
Mhm.
and so in a way, he he wasn't a pure born Evemore being, but he began to serve Evemore, and that was from like the last campaign that we did, and but then there was a huge event that occurred called the Core Reset, and
That doesn't sound good.
that event that was at the end of my last campaign, and it caused everything to be completely basically a massive surge occurred throughout the entire core realms, which caused everyone to go through like mass amnesia, and they lost
Mhm.
their memories. Chaos started going crazy like across like all the different worlds and stuff, and then their people's memories, like main small fragments of their memories, started coming back through like severe dreams and crazy, just like strenuous experiences, to a point where like some people even died from these fragments of their memories coming back. And
Mhm.
the people that actually experienced the core reset, who like actually helped in helped in trying to fight off a big threat that occurred that no one truly knows about. Those people who fought that threat didn't experience this fragmentation that occurred. William Soar was one of them, and so he went through this whole process of basically he can't really tell everyone about like what's going on, but he's been writing down all this information about like what actually occurred, and he plans on eventually releasing it to the broader public sphere of all the different societies within the foundation region of the core. And but
That's
then
so cool.
but then this player, this player decided, I really want to make an evil character. and, and I was like, okay, what kind of evil character are you gonna make? And he's like, I want to make a Reticon. And so I
Mhm.
ended up having him make a Reticon who is also a chosen of Evemore. So now he's playing as two chosen of Evemore on two separate sides. So he's on the dawn and the dusk. And so I literally recorded an entire 21, I think it's 21 episodes. Yeah, 21 episode series, that with him playing as both of those characters on separate sides of the core realms, and they're them meeting and clashing against each other. And I swear to God, it is probably the most epic series I have ever had the privilege of being able to actually run. And
Mhm.
the RP value, I would say, is on the level of like some of the most epic critical role sessions that I've ever seen. And I'm not
That is
trying.
wild.
I am not trying to like hype up my stuff, but like there are moments inside of it where the emotion is so vivid and deep
Mhm.
that it was it made me shake from how deep it was. And it is a tragic story. it is a tragic. It's a tragedy. I'm
Oh
not.
no. Oh
But
man.
it is probably the one of my favorite things about running games is dice.
Mhm.
For some reason, whenever I'm running a game, they work so well with the story. Not for the
Mhm.
players, not for me, but with the story. And
Yes.
I am sometimes I'm like, okay, there's something is being like infused into these dice to allow these roles to happen because I myself I like to improvise all my like most of my sessions. I do like
Mhm.
90% improvise, 10% prep. And so I'm like, I love it because I don't even know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
I'll if a dice roll happens and I have ideas of okay, what is a very bad thing that could happen in a situation? What is a medium
Mhm.
thing that might happen to where like, oh, they failed, but it's not as bad as it could be, or what is like what is a really good thing that could happen that could
Mhm.
really save them in the situation. And the cool thing is that like because chosen are are guided by these higher entities, you can utilize those higher entities to like send assassins after them. Like, hey, like one entity like that hates you, the entity that you serve, has sent an assassin after you, and because I rolled this thing, oh great, they're about to come and like snipe you from far away, and you have
Mhm.
to figure your stuff out. And I always try to leave room open for players to get out of the situation that they're in, but
Mhm.
sometimes sometimes the situations are so dire. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, that
Sometimes the
sorry.
dice work so well.
But yeah, that is a little part of it. I'll let you know when that series starts releasing because it's gonna
Mhm.
be the climax of a lot of the stuff that I've been prepping for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds so insane. Again, like just absolutely crazy. That is so so very cool. And I mean, I think everyone that's what they're usually searching for within TTRPGs. They're searching for those moments to make just these amazing stories, even if they can be goofy or anything like that.
Mhm.
Everyone's looking to make these memorable stories and moments at their table, and that just sounds amazing.
I also
Amazing simply.
I also have another player who has made a very interesting character. I'm not gonna dive too deep into this one, but they're a part of the New Age squad. They're called Squad 119 for reasons for reasons. But this is my live stream campaign that I'm running, and their character, their name's Sai. Their full name is Sifra Nis Medina Tees. And the reason for that is they wanted to play a character, two actual conscious minds merged into one. And so they made a Sin Frame, which is a robot inside my universe. So they have the memories of two separate beings, but they're one being themselves.
Oh,
And
that's crazy.
their backstory on both characters, they like have a family feud. So it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet situation that is going on, but they're not in love, they're just merged together. And so it's pretty deep, and I'm excited to be able to explore that story a lot further inside the campaign that I'm running with them.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds really, really, really cool. Oh man, that's seriously amazing. I do love the freedom of some of these open systems where it's like you can create anything because you do just get those wild ideas. And I'm
Hmm.
curious, you mentioned that you aren't super deep within the TTRPG space before really getting into game design.
Hmm.
Since you have gotten into game design, have you looked further into systems that are more open, like just a few that I know off the top of my head? I mean, Fate, Cipher, things like that.
That is actually one of my goals in the future. So what I want to do, how I envision this whole enterprise that I'm building, I want to take the core realms and little pockets of it and then create create the core realms within those systems inside separate systems and have them be like introductions to
Mhm.
the universe, and then Reborn in Power like encompasses all of it, whereas these systems encompass like the small aspects that you can explore, but you
Mhm.
don't get the full picture kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so what I'm planning on doing is I want to make a supplement for Pathfinder.
Yeah,
Uh,
Pathfinder would be a wild one to have it in.
yeah, one I'm gonna do one for D&D just because it's D&D. So I'm not sure if you follow them, but Mythcraft. Um,
Mythcraft?
yeah, Mythcraft. So Quasi Real Publishing, the Homebrew Network, that does the homebrew, actual play, and then they have like
I do
all the
not.
different. They're on Twitter. You should definitely reach out to them and see if you can get them on the podcast. I definitely recommend
Will be
you.
doing that later.
Yes, yes. But they have a new game that they're coming out. I hope I backed it on Kickstarter, and they're basically trying to create their own highly customizable game as well. And a lot of their systems actually work well with how I've designed Reborn in Power as well. So
Mhm.
I plan on homebrewing inside their system. I want to look into GURPS as well
Mhm.
as Fate. The Cipher system I haven't looked into like very much, but I've heard good things about it, and I know someone who actually who's played it before, but I haven't gotten to actually have it run for me. I want to be able to play inside these games first
Mhm.
before I actually start to like work on stuff inside them, just so that I can get a better understanding of them. Because for
Yeah,
me,
absolutely.
for me, when I learn a system, I need to actually play it in order to learn it
Mhm.
rather than read it. Because reading it, it goes in one ear, goes out the other ear for me. It's just a it's a problem. It's a problem. Even though I write these things and I create these things, I like this. I understand that sometimes it's just better to just play it to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, I read currently, I mean, I'm running a Monster of the Week game and I read the entire book and I absorbed a lot of the knowledge, though as soon as we started to play, I'm like,
Uh,
I mean, I know what's in it. I know how to play it. But that's why great reference tools are actually one of my favorite things with TTRPGs is, you know, you can read the book and understand how the game is played, but when you actually do play it, those moments of like I don't remember what this rule says or anything like
yeah.
that can be not fun. Since you seem to have a lot of ideas for what to do with Reborn in Power, I'm curious if you have plans on making reference tools for it, because, like I said, that's one of my favorite things within TTRPGs. And if I find a game that has good reference tools, I'm way more likely to play it because it's going to make it easier for myself and my players.
Mm-hmm. So as reference tools, what like can you define like what kind of reference tools like you would be looking for?
Absolutely. So, at least Monster of the Week is going to be my kind of reference for this.
Mm-hmm.
Monster of the Week, basically, it's a much lighter system than something like Reborn in Power, so there is differences there.
Yeah, yeah.
But Monster of the Week, basically, what it did is it put all of the basic rules of the system, things that there's like, I want to say maybe six or more than that, somewhere around that. There are six or more moves that make up basically the entire game. They put
Mm,
all of that and how to do them, along with the basic rules for like leveling up and healing, and there's a few other things on there. They put all of this like basic important information on two sheets of paper. and
Mm.
basically makes it so that when I started to run Monster of the Week, I was able to. I read the entire book myself and I go over it often, but my players have never looked at the book and have only picked up this game through those 2 sheets of paper of reference tools and reference stuff and their own playbooks.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
that
then for
that
myself,
is
I mean, there's slightly different things, but it's a very similar idea of like how to set up mysteries and things like that.
Yeah, that is actually something that I've been working on. I have how you play, how you actually create a character. So I have
Hmm.
an online, I would say, rule book in a way.
Hmm.
I use this program, this online program, to be able, like, for players to go through the actual character creation process. I I mainly, what I want to do, because Reborn in Power has so many, like, moving mechanics, different
Hmm.
mechanics that work between each other. I'm not sure how to fit that on pages, but that is something I've thought about, and how to make sure that, basically, like, too long didn't read, kind of thing, like
Yeah.
TLDR. uh,
A simplified
yeah,
way to
simplified.
consume that. Yeah, and I don't think it has to be on like, a few pieces of paper, especially if it is a more complex system. I wouldn't expect, D&D to be, all of the information on 2 pieces of paper. Same thing for Pathfinder, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But things like D&D have like a, GM screen
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you're
that
able to get
that's
a bunch of the information. It's things like that, tools that you can use to make the game easier to play in whatever way you are able to make those tools and make it the easiest for those players to, use.
that is definitely something I've thought about, and honestly, it gives me an idea of what I should do. But I will. Honestly, I haven't gotten to that part yet, because of just, I'm spread thin. I would say,
Hmm.
and
Oh, absolutely.
life, life as a content creator is one of those things where you seek out your passion, but then you realize that life
Hmm.
life is not going to go your way at
Hmm.
times, and then you have to adjust accordingly. And that's kind of
Hmm.
where I'm at currently. But my goal is to bring on more people into it, and this is actually, this entire conversation has given me ideas of how I could do that.
Oh,
And
I'm so glad.
yes, yes, it what I have. So what I do when I'm creating content for Reborn in Power, I make I make small PDFs for this, like, very specific content, like, for, like, the big, like, the major points that need to be thought about. Whereas, like,
Hmm.
for instance, the characters, like, skills and stuff, or like, which origin you want to be,
Hmm.
or like the different damage types and negative effects and stuff. And then all the other stuff, like, all the extra, like, mechanical, deep, I would say, like, explanations behind things, is more written up inside the actual online program. So when you go into chosen creation, you get to read through, like, what the rules are saying, and then you also get downloadable PDFs on, like, on specific, like, the specific sections of like, what kind of gear you could get,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
different stuff.
That's really
I
cool.
Yeah, that is what I have how I have it so far. What I want eventually is to be able to, it is basically, I'm trying to get another company to help me make better character sheets, so that the character sheets aren't, like, super congested with just too much going on, because there is
Mhm.
there's a lot of different things inside of it, and it's a number country system. So I want to make sure that, once, like, once you have a specific modifier, you know what the modifier is. Whereas
Mhm.
inside, like, the character sheets that I made for Reborn in Power, they actually have, you have, like, the rank area, and then you have, like, a talent point, which gives you a +1, and then
Mhm.
you have the attribute, and then you have to add in all that stuff together. the max you get is like a plus 18 to your roll when you roll a d12.
Mhm.
So you the max you could absolutely get, unless you're adding an extra modifiers, you'd get a 30. But
Oh.
yeah, you can get up to pretty high numbers. Like, this is, I think, one of the highest numbers I've gotten so far with a min max character. Like, this character min max to be able to craft craft his stuff. He crafted a like a lock. He made a locking mechanism for his crafting station. And he rolled I think he rolled a 49 or 48 or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Big
And
numbers.
yeah, big numbers. Inside Reborn in Power, we do big numbers here. But yeah,
Just makes you feel cooler.
yeah, and I also like rolling a lot of dice. So when you're doing abilities, you could actually spend a lot of energy, and if you have it max rank, so rank 5, you can spend 42 energy, and you get 60-12, and you get to roll 60-12. And I'm just like,
Oh, wow.
you get to, shake those dice and roll. Yes, that will slow down. It will slow down combat, but sometimes you just want to roll those dice.
Actually, I am curious, how is the combat system within Reborn in Power?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked. So I have currently 3 forms of combat. The first form of combat is the traditional initiative. You roll a d12, add your agility, and that is your initiative score. If you have like a feat or a skill or something like that that will add to your initiative, then you can use that as well. And then you just go, numbers, and then basically every character gets 2 forms, because you have offensive forms, defensive forms, and power forms inside the game. Offensive forms are obviously what you use with your weapons, and you could do whatever you choose based off of your character, like how they're wielding a weapon. Defensive forms is like dodge, block, and parry, and you can do certain things with that based off of like the different type of thing you have. And you have different skills, feats, and abilities that can add to these things or give you different opportunities within combat in order to give you better outcomes and all that stuff. And then the way to use those would be using maneuvers, and you get a number of maneuvers on your turn equal to your tier in game. So there's 3 tiers: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Level 1 through 4 is tier 1, level 5 through 8 is tier 2, and then level 9 through 12 is tier 3.
Gotcha.
And that's how the game scales. And you get to use functions on your gear. So like, let's say you have a tech volver. The tech volver has the loaded function on it, so you can use one of your maneuvers to activate the loaded function, which will give you an extra maneuver, an extra form on your turn, so you can fire off 3 light range shots at your enemy. Or you can choose to be like, okay, I have 2 forms, so one of those forms is going to be a defensive form on my turn, which if you use a defensive form on your turn, you can actually recover stamina on your next turn in order to be able to use skills and do certain things as well, because stamina is like your stamina in combat. So there's a lot of moving things, and then you have free movement, and that is determined by your race in game. And the movement is like range bands. So like range 1 is like 10 feet of movement. Range 2 is 20 feet. Range 1 is like your melee range. So within 10 feet you're in melee range basically. And that's traditional combat. You do that. I also have squad combat. Squad combat is whichever character has the highest agility is going to roll initiative for the entire squad. And when that happens, you have 4 stages of squad combat. It's the initial stage. You roll initiative, and you have the movement stage, which every character can just use their movement however they want. There's ways to, like, you can use your movement to roll like a basic skill. So like you can be like roll a perception check to see if there's some kind of opportune area, and you can point it out to your allies. You can you can like shout out a command to give let your other ally to have more movement or actually attack on their turn as an opportunity attack kind of thing. So like
Mhm.
there's strategic things within squad combat, and then there is squad formations within the movement stage where you could actually do a formation with your squad to give you guys to give all of you like an advantage on some kind of check. So if you're like you're like, okay, we want to fortify our position, so all of you get into like a circle and fortify your
Mhm.
stances, and then that gives you like a bonus to your block or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And so those are movement strategies, and then you have the third stage of squad combat is the action stage. Action
Mhm.
stage, that is where you use your forms, your maneuvers, and whatever like reactions you might have or something like that. I already kind of explained those a little bit. And then the cool thing is of squad combat is the fourth stage, which is the resolve stage. And with the resolve stage is you can actually you roll to see, well, the first the lore master decides which like group, which squad was the winner of that round, and based off
Mhm.
of that, people have to just like basically everyone inside a squad has to choose their like either a discipline check or or the victorious squad. They use all their discipline bonuses. So a bonus would be their rank and their talent. So
Mhm.
you could have a six, like a six as your bonus. So if like let's say you have four players and all of them have a +5, so then you have a 20 plus the squad's highest will score, and their highest will score is an 8. So then you have a 28. That's the
Wow.
set difficulty for the defeated squad to roll. And so the defeated squad
Mhm.
then has to roll a D12, and they add their endurance bonuses. If the defeated squad of that round is able to beat the victorious squads, they get to go first on the next round. So now the initiative changes because of that.
Yeah, I like that.
So
I love there's have been a few systems that I've looked at that have, like, shifting initiatives like that, and I think it's really, really cool.
yeah, that I really like that concept. Sometimes I forget to use it because I'm so used to just going to the next one. But that is a very fun one. And then also I have it to where if if a uh, if a squad is victorious for multiple rounds, there is a chance for the other squad to either surrender. There's like
Mhm.
a surrender mechanic or
Oh, yeah.
a retreat mechanic, and then
Oh, I
it
like that
goes
a lot.
into and then it goes into like all the like if you're retreating, then maybe it turns into a chase scene kind of thing,
Mhm.
and then you're in that situation.
Oh, that's
But
so fun. I
that
I think in
yeah
more games, there it needs to be normalized in more games to run away.
yeah. Honestly, the runaway is more so like, hey, the DM is just looking at you. He's like, are you sure you guys want to do this? Maybe this is
Are you
one of,
sure?
and then the players just decide to stay in for too long and then not realize that they need to run away.
Yeah, because I mean, I think because I think I'm actually curious because I think in more tactical combat, it's a bit tricky to always run away because you're having to spend a lot of either movement or resources or specific things to do that. But that just reminded me, how tactful is the combat in Reborn in Power?
It is pretty tactical. It's like I would say like it's tactical, but then sometimes people just like to do the same thing over and over again. It's because, but there what's cool about it is when you're using maneuvers, you have your skills, feats, and abilities that you have access to, and then you also have your gear that you have access to, and some of those things can actually play off of each other. So you can actually have certain skills that one player has and then another player has, and then they can work in tangent. And because squad combat, you're going on the same turn, you guys can actually like collaborate together as players to try to do this
Yeah,
awesome combo. But then also
that's really cool.
the foes also have that ability as well.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of moving things happening all
Mhm.
together, which sometimes makes combat take longer, which I understand that it like there's a lot of people who don't like that combat takes too long and all that stuff, which is
Mhm.
why I tried to make squad combat more like you're going all on the same turn. You
Actually, yeah. I like that a lot because recently I did a whole Morkborg thing with someone,
mhm, mhm,
and in Morkborg it does something similar where you roll to see who goes first, and then all the monsters go on the same turn, or the enemies go on the same turn, and all of the players go on the same turn. And when I actually learned about that from the person, they told me as well is they've implemented that exact style of play into their D&D games.
mhm.
And that's actually how I've been running my D&D games recently, is with that style of combat, because it actually like you said, it does make it quicker. There is, it's kind of the tricky parts of, all of the enemies go at the same time, but you do get the advantage of
Yeah.
you get to all go at the same time, and it makes it go faster. It's very interesting, and I think that would be really, I mean, at least for me, I would probably run that more so in squad combat most of the time, because I think it's
Mhm.
more interesting for all the players to work together and like do these cool formations and plans. So I think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, I really wanted to incorporate that, and I think that a lot of systems should start to think about that. I know that when I have played it with certain groups of people, they sometimes do get a little confused because they don't know whether or not they should go now and do their thing, because they're thinking more so along the lines of what is their character going to do instead of
Mhm.
how is their character going to help.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that having a different view of how you're going to play your character inside a group of players who are working together, having it be like all together rather than on a single turn, it makes it, because there's times where you're just like, I want to say this thing to this person so that they can get something. It's like, oh, you have to wait for your turn. You have to wait
It's
for your turn,
terrible.
and sometimes that's yeah, that sucks. So like having the different types of combat, I feel like is optional for
Mhm.
the GM to be able to use that. And also like what's cool about Reborn in Power is because it is such a big system, you could actually play it with like call them solo sessions. So like I have one player playing, and we just run an actual campaign, just one player,
Mhm.
and they get to do whatever they want. And sometimes it's a little more straining on me because I had to run all these different NPCs. That's but it's cool to be able to switch between whether or not you want to use like the traditional initiative, like the traditional
Mhm.
initiative combat, or using squad combat to be able to actually do different things for different
Yeah,
scenarios.
absolutely.
Um,
I think that's a huge bonus
mhm,
to a system now when I look at it. So I think that is really, really nice to have the option, because there are definitely people who are going to prefer one or the other, but to have the option, fantastic.
mhm, mhm. And then there's one other combat that
Mhm.
is available for playtesting right currently, and that's space combat. That I've been working on. It's still a work in progress, but it
Mhm.
is really promising, and I enjoy it because it's different than the other combats. These are more for when you're on the ground and fighting each other. Space combat is
Mhm.
for when you're in space inside a spaceship and you're doing all the stuff
Yeah.
and having all that fun. So I've been working on that, and it is currently in playtest. People can sign up for it. I have an itch for it as well, and
Oh,
that
what's
one's
your itch?
It is msarthadian.itch.io, and then you can go slash s dash I dash s, and that is Squadrons in Spacecraft, and that is a supplement for Reborn in Power. And how I plan on doing it is I want it to be kind of it could actually be played separately from Reborn in Power,
Mhm.
where you just basically get to be inside a spacecraft and then go through different like space adventures and combat with the spacecraft kind of thing. But then
Yeah, that's so cool.
if you add Reborn and Power to it, then it adds the level of detail with all the different things inside Reborn
Mhm.
and Power that you could add to your space combat adventures and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really awesome.
that's what I plan on doing. It's supposed to be it's going to be like a little bit easier than how Reborn in Power is played. It's going to be
Mhm.
action point kind of thing as well.
Mhm.
So like every person inside the spacecraft gets a specific role, and then they have a number of actions equal to the rank of one of their skills and stuff, and that's how many actions they get, and then each role has specific type of actions they could do. So like a pilot gets to engage thrusters or do a barrel roll to evade like evasive maneuvers. They could fire off on stuff. And then there's gunner, there's a medic, there's a tech, there is a co-pilot, there's
Oh,
also an
that's cool.
infiltrator, as well as a captain.
Mhm.
I think that's all of them. Yeah, I think that's all of
Yeah,
them.
no, that sounds really awesome. That's really exciting, though. I mean, obviously, it is really helpful to play test, but how has your experience been with playtesting Reborn in Power?
It has been good. I have gotten feedback from several different people. One of the main pieces of feedback that I've gotten is why create a new system, and why not just create inside another system that is already
Mhm.
has an audience and all that stuff. And I take that to heart, which is why I'm thinking about like branching out to the different systems and just using the core realms as the base setting and all that
Mhm.
stuff. I've gotten like most of it has been positive. The main thing is that Reborn in Power it's hard to find all the things, and like being able to try to like create your character and all that stuff. It's difficult, which is why I'm trying to create pre-mades as well as my online program. I have like hyperlinks set up inside of it so that when you go into a specific section of the actual chosen creation, you'll
Mhm.
get like a directory, and then you can like read through the directory and choose which section you want to go to learn about certain things for
Mhm.
each section. And so I've tried to work on ways in which to help streamline the process of
Mhm.
character creation and not make it so confusing. But there's you manage to find ways to make it confusing. Yeah, that's been one of the biggest challenges, and I know that it's also a hurdle because like for new players to get into the game, because it's complex. There's so much to it that and the way the system works, if you really get down to it and start playing it more often, it's fun. I enjoy it. I think like most of literally all my players enjoy it. The only gripe is that there's not enough content yet, or there's not enough structure, I guess, because
Mhm.
I'm still kind of building out the foundation of it all. The
Absolutely.
system is there. Like you could play it, and it runs well. It's just more so along the lines of like those things that you said, having like accessible accessibility of the different, like the basic rules there,
Mhm.
having a lore master like guide as well. That's something I've been working on as well, and those things are coming along slowly because it's just me. currently. We're working on it, so
Absolutely.
that's just been the name of the game for me recently.
Mhm. Well, I think it's amazing how far and how much you have made already, even if it's not all, you know, in one place and the easiest to access. You have the structure there
Mhm.
that, it's just about getting it done, which is, its own hurdle
Yeah.
to go through. But I think that is really, really cool. And I'm not the biggest crunchy game person. However, I'm really curious. I would really like to try this game out a lot because, again, like I mentioned, where I even have with my own, D&D campaign, it's got ideas from that are similar, and I really would love to explore it more. And so it would be awesome to see something a bit more condensed, I guess is
Yeah,
the
of
right
course.
word, with everything in it. But I think there is so much potential and possibility here that is very, very exciting.
Yeah, of course, and I am open to playing with basically anyone, and I enjoy just being able to run one shots with people, or even mini campaigns to like get
Mhm.
get their feet wet into what is going on inside this new expanding universe that's growing. And if you ever want to, I am open to playing. And if you want to bring on other people too, we could have like a full squadron and have you guys go and explore a world of some kind.
Yeah, that would be so fun. Yeah, because I mean, there's just so many possibilities with that. That would be super, super fun. It's amazing to, even have the opportunities to do stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
absolutely, that would be something I would very much be interested in. And I would also love, you mentioned the live play that you're doing for Reborn in
Yes,
Power. Where can people find that?
that can be found on my YouTube channel at Arthadian Anthologies. There is currently, right now, we are at our 13th episode. Next
Mhm.
Tuesday, we do bi-weekly meetups, and you can either watch it on our live stream on Twitch, because we do it on Twitch at Arthadian Anthologies, and then the VOD goes up onto YouTube after that. And
Yeah.
the full thing is on YouTube. It's also on my podcast in podcast format. And there's an actual prologue series before the New Age campaign occurred, and
Mhm.
you can actually listen to it through that as well. And then all the extra series, because I just started releasing another series called The Foundation, and that one features my brother who plays, and then one of our friends as well. And that one's fun. And I really my my goal with these is to really tell an interwoven storyline through like an anthology based structure, where each series it takes place at a different point in time throughout
Mhm.
this reset era,
That's
where
so
like
cool.
core reset happened, and up until cycle 140, which is where the current new age group is actually at.
Mhm.
And the goal is to really build out a puzzle for people to pick out all the pieces and try to put it together to try to figure out this massive mystery that I've been
Mhm.
weaving for the past 3 years working on the podcast. So it's all throughout the podcast. If you listen to the podcast, you could go through the different stages of my development, and get some cool stories that I got to do like a little bit of audio fiction style storytelling. So I
Mhm.
do all the voice acting, and I also score it with cinematic music and sound effects and all that stuff, so that it feels more immersive. And then I did little. This is all in season 3, so I did like little sagas where it focused on a specific type of thing,
Mhm.
and then each one had their own like little trilogy of like character, like a character got to play inside of Reborn in Power and all that stuff, and like players got to play inside of it, and those are some fun stories.
That sounds so cool.
I do recommend it. I have it all on my link tree. So if people want to check that
Mhm.
out, it's linktree /MS Arthadian. And then you go to it, you get all of the different series broken down through the podcast, and you can listen to how Reborn in Power is run and how I run the games, my style of GMing, and
Yeah.
yeah.
That is seriously so awesome. I think so cool to watch to actually watch and listen to the creators of games actually run them themselves, because it's like, this is their whole idea of it, and I think that is so super cool. So anyone who is listening, please go check that out because it's really awesome. I'll definitely be checking it out as well. I'm gonna be doing like a whole I'm gonna be doing what I'm calling my wine tasting of a bunch of podcasts where I'm listening to like episode one or like an episode of it to like get an idea of it, because there's so many cool ones that I've been finding and I would
Mhm.
love to check it out, and I am definitely planning on it. So I'm so excited for that. But I'm curious, you mentioned some of the hurdles with creating Reborn in Power. I'm curious if, other than, being a one-man team and, there being a lot of content to create, is there another big hurdle that you would warn beginner game designers for?
Yeah, a big hurdle for beginners, I would say, is uh, coming up with how balancing works,
Hmm.
because the thing is that Reborn in Power is not my first system. I've gone through like probably 20 different systems before I got to
Hmm.
Reborn in Power, and finding finding systems to emulate is probably your best bet to go down when it
Hmm.
comes to actually creating a system. If you want to be unique, you should start with something that you already know, and then
Hmm.
try to change up the aspects of it in order to fit it how you would want it, how you and your players might want it. I specifically, when I was making Reborn in Power, I was like, I want customization. I want to be able to say, hey, can I play a robot mage assassin who can literally like have, like, all these enhancements on their body, like their cybernetic enhancements and all that stuff, and they're able to use magical energy in some ways, and they're an assassin. And it's like, okay, how can I do that? How can I create a system that works for that? Find a trying to find like something to work for what you are, what you envision. That
Hmm.
is the best route to go down. But I also understand like the whole idea of trying to, like, if you're trying to market it, if you're trying to really be successful at it, sometimes it probably is better to actually, instead of creating your own system, going and finding a system that works for you,
Hmm.
and actually like build it, like making homebrew content within that system, because there's already a community base there. Because at like once you're making a new system, you have to build the community around it, and like that,
Hmm.
if you want to be a successful inside the industry and actually like make money from it, that is probably the best bet, is going down the route of finding, unless you have a group of people that are working with you. If you have a group, then you can actually like pick and choose who's doing what jobs, like having a marketing director, because I'm the marketing director for Reborn in Power. i'm i'm the I'm the everything. So it having a team, having all the working pieces that make these businesses work, that inside the industry. um Currently it's like there have been a lot of game systems that are starting to prop up because of, well, the whole OGO debacle that happened with with that whole situation. I mean, we won't get into it, but it's
Yeah,
like,
it's its own
yeah,
thing.
it's its own thing. Just know that there will be people who support you, and
Mhm.
you have to find those people and have them join you. And sometimes people can be difficult, but you just gotta do what you gotta do. And that's more
Yeah.
that's more talking to me, talking to But yeah,
No, absolutely. I mean, I think as frustrating as it can be to continue to work on a project and such, see tons of TTRPGs out there and so many different options. It can be overwhelming and it can be frustrating to go through and, create your own fan base and stuff like that. But, keep, as if you keep working at it and keep working towards it, even if you are, I mean, even as a one-man team, it is very frustrating. It can be very frustrating, but I
hmm
think, there is its own reward of creating your own system. Like that is so unique and interesting and cool. And, there's always going to be people out there that will find it. I mean,
hmm
there are so many games. There are so many insanely niche games that have markets. You're going to find someone who loves it because that's just how this community works. There are just so many people who want to play such specific games that you can definitely find someone out there.
hmm
And I think it's amazing that you've done all this for this game so far. You said what? How many years of working on it?
So, Reborn in Power, I started working on Reborn in Power in 2018, but I started working on
Mhm.
like actual like game design and development back in 2014. So 9 years, almost 10 next year
That's
actually.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool though. I mean, and think of again, it's the experience of it all. You're learning every single thing that do for it. You're learning and that's so cool.
hmm Yeah, I'm glad because even if like let's say that it doesn't work out and I have to find another route, it's there. It's been built.
Mhm.
All of it has been built. So if I ever like do come back to it, then it's there and I can come back to it. I can also play it with my friends like as a hobby and do all that stuff because it's already been built. But yeah, I hope to build it into a large community where a bunch of creators are coming on and creating their own worlds and their own lore to expand upon it and just create a network that is just it's a new expanding universe.
Yes. Exactly. I think that is just fantastic. And I'm trying to think if there's more that I would like to cover, but I mean that's just also just a really cool ending point
Yeah, yeah.
in itself. So I mean, I think that's probably where we're going to end. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic. Please go check out the Arthadian Anthologies and everything that Arthadian is doing at this moment with, all the projects and check out the chosen creation and all of that. Look into the system. It is really cool. It sounds amazing, and I can't wait to start checking it out further myself. I'm even hopefully have an opportunity to play with Arthadian
Oh,
itself.
most definitely. Most definitely. Well, we can get something situated within the next like few weeks. I am totally down to play whenever. And yes, thank you for having me on this. Like, it has given me ideas of what I can improve upon, and I'm excited to be able to explore it with others as well.
Yes, absolutely. I am so happy that you came on as well. Again, everyone who has listened to this episode, thank you so much. Please, again, go check out Arthadian and all the things that he is working on. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. And thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please make sure to give the RPG Goblin a review. Every little bit of support helps keep this podcast going, including and especially reviews. So make sure to do that wherever you listen to your podcasts. It was fantastic being able to talk to Arthadian and break down Reborn in Power. It is such an interesting system, and I can't wait for it to develop and grow even more. And if you want to follow along with the process and also hear about the Arthadian anthologies and the whole world behind Reborn in Power, then go listen to Arthadian's podcast, which is Arthadian's Anthology, and also check him out on Twitter at MSArthadian. Now, all that information will be in the description below, along with where you can find his Twitch stream. Again, thank you so much for listening, and actually, if you are hearing this right now, specifically if you're hearing this in July, I'm taking the month off. We're still going to be posting episodes, and I'm still going to be posting episodes, and I'm still going to be posting episodes, and I'm still going to be interacting on social media, but I'm taking the month off from doing the active work of recording and editing episodes, so this is all pre-done. So, hello from the past! The next episode of Th RPG Goblin will be coming out July 14th, and it's going to be another TTRPG topic, which it's been a hot minute since we've done one of those, and specifically, it's going to be about stealing from RPGs. Now, this may sound questionable and weird, but trust me, it's not, because we don't actually talk about stealing RPGs. We talk about how you can take mechanics and rules from other TTRPGs and bring them into your own game to improve your stories. And it is an absolutely fantastic thing that you should do, so I recommend listening to this episode as I bring on Damien from the Roleplay Rejects podcast. So if that sounds like a great time to you, make sure to watch out for when that episode releases on July 14th. Now, I think that is it. Everyone have a fantastic July, and I'll see you next time.